Welcome to Star Bios, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating lives of Hollywood's most iconic figures. I'm your host, Casey Gold, and today we're going to embark on a captivating journey through the remarkable life of the Master of Suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock. With a career spanning over 6 decades, Hitchcock left an indelible mark on the world of cinema, and his influence can still be felt today, like ripples spreading from a stone cast into a serene lake. But before he became the legendary director we all know and love, Alfred Hitchcock was just a young boy growing up in London, surrounded by the sights, sounds, and smells of a bustling city that seemed to pulsate with an energy all its own. The smell of freshly baked bread wafting from the local bakery, the sound of hawkers calling out their daily specials, and the sight of horse-drawn carriages rattling down cobblestone streets all blended together to create a sensory experience that would later influence his cinematic visions. Born on August 13, 1899, in Leytonstone, Essex, England, Alfred Joseph Hitchcock was the second of 3 children to William and Emma Hitchcock. His father, a greengrocer and poulterer, owned a small shop in the East End of London, where young Alfred would often help out with the family business, learning the intricacies of commerce and the art of negotiation. The Hitchcocks were a devout Catholic family, and Alfred's early life was marked by strict discipline and a strong sense of morality, which would later shape his depiction of authority figures in his films as distant, unyielding, and sometimes menacing. As a child, he was fascinated by the world around him, spending hours exploring the streets of London, watching the bustling markets, and marveling at the grandeur of the city's landmarks, such as the towering dome of St. Paul's Cathedral. Growing up in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Hitchcock was exposed to a unique cultural landscape that would later influence his approach to storytelling. The British Music Hall, with its eclectic mix of comedy, drama, and music, was a staple of London's entertainment scene, and Hitchcock would often attend performances at the nearby Hackney Empire. He was particularly drawn to the works of popular entertainers like George Formby and Gracie Fields, whose quick wit and charming stage presence would later inspire his own use of humor and irony in films like The 39 Steps and Rear Window. The music hall's influence can be seen in Hitchcock's use of montage sequences, where he would juxtapose disparate images to create a sense of tension or surprise, much like the rapid-fire delivery of a music hall comedian. Hitchcock was also an avid reader, devouring books on history, science, and literature, which would shape his fascination with the human psyche and the art of suspense. As a young boy, he was particularly drawn to the works of Charles Dickens, whose vivid descriptions of London's streets and characters would later inspire his own cinematic visions of the city. He spent hours poring over Dickens's novels such as Oliver Twist and David Copperfield, marveling at the author's ability to craft compelling stories that explored the complexities of human nature. This literary influence can be seen in Hitchcock's use of symbolism and metaphor in films like Rebecca and Vertigo, where he would often employ visual motifs to convey themes and emotions. Hitchcock's childhood was not without its challenges, however. His parents were strict disciplinarians, and he was often punished for minor infractions, such as talking back or failing to complete his chores. This strict upbringing would later influence his depiction of authority figures in his films, often portraying them as distant, unyielding, and sometimes menacing. Despite these challenges, Hitchcock's natural curiosity and creativity thrived, encouraged by his parents' support for his artistic pursuits. He began drawing and sketching at an early age, developing a keen eye for detail and composition that would serve him well in his future career as a filmmaker. As he grew older, Hitchcock became increasingly fascinated with the world of technology and engineering. He spent hours building model trains and experimenting with electrical circuits, which would later influence his use of special effects in films like The Birds and Rope. This fascination with technology also led him to attend the London County Council School of Engineering and Navigation, where he developed a passion for design and problem-solving. However, it was during this time that he also discovered his true calling, the world of cinema. In 1915, at the age of 16, Hitchcock landed a job as a title card designer at the London branch of the famous Players Lasky Company, which would later become Paramount Pictures. This marked the beginning of his journey into the film industry, and it was here that he would learn the skills and techniques that would eventually make him a master filmmaker. He spent long hours in the studio, watching films, learning from other directors, and experimenting with different visual styles. It was during this period that he developed his signature technique of using visual motifs to convey themes and emotions, which would become a hallmark of his filmmaking style. The early 20th century was a time of great change and upheaval, with the outbreak of World War I and the subsequent social and economic shifts that followed. Hitchcock's experiences during this period would later influence his depiction of war and its effects on society in films like Lifeboat and Notorious. The sense of uncertainty and chaos that pervaded the era also influenced his use of suspense and tension in films, as he sought to capture the anxieties and fears of his audience. As Hitchcock's career gained momentum in the 1920s, he found himself at the forefront of a revolution in the film industry. The London-based Gainsborough Pictures, where he worked as a title card designer and eventually became an assistant director, was a hotbed of creative energy. It was here that he met his future wife, Alma Reville, who was not only a talented editor and screenwriter, but also a kindred spirit with a passion for storytelling. The two married in 1926, marking the beginning of a long and successful collaboration that would span both their personal and professional lives. Their courtship was a romantic and creative one, with Hitchcock often taking Alma on long walks along the Thames, discussing film ideas and sharing his dreams of becoming a director. As they strolled through the fog-shrouded streets of London, Hitchcock would point out the city's hidden corners and secret spots, revealing to Alma the eerie beauty that lay just beneath the surface. These walks would later inspire some of the most iconic scenes in his films, as he drew upon the city's atmospheric landscapes to craft suspenseful narratives that would leave audiences on the edge of their seats. In the early 1920s, Hitchcock began to make his mark as a director, helming films such as The Pleasure Garden, 1925, and The Mountain Eagle, 1926. These early efforts showcased his burgeoning talent for visual storytelling and his ability to evoke emotions through the careful composition of each frame. However, it was with the release of The Lodger, a story of the London fog in 1927, that he truly established himself as a rising star in the film world. This silent thriller, about a serial killer targeting young women in London, showcased Hitchcock's mastery of suspense and his ability to craft compelling, visually driven narratives. As the success of The Lodger spread, Hitchcock found himself in demand by studios on both sides of the Atlantic. British International Pictures, BIP, approached him to direct a series of films, including Downhill, 1927, and The Ring, 1927. These films further solidified Hitchcock's reputation as a talented young director, and he soon found himself working with some of the most prominent actors and actresses of the day. His collaboration with Ivor Novello, the dashing leading man of Downhill, resulted in a film that was both a critical and commercial success, cementing Hitchcock's status as a major player in the British film industry. The advent of sound in the late 1920s presented both opportunities and challenges for Hitchcock. His first talkie, Blackmail, 1929, was a major success, with its innovative use of sound effects and dialogue helping to establish him as a leading figure in the burgeoning sound film industry. As he navigated this new landscape, Hitchcock continued to push the boundaries of what was possible on screen, experimenting with techniques such as montage and quick cuts to create a sense of frenetic energy that would become a hallmark of his style. Throughout the 1930s, Hitchcock directed a string of successful films, including Murder, 1930, The 39 Steps, 1935, and Sabotage, 1936. These films showcased his versatility as a director, as well as his ability to work in a variety of genres, from comedy to thriller. His collaboration with screenwriter Charles Bennett on The 39 Steps resulted in one of the most iconic chase sequences in cinema history, with Hitchcock's use of montage and quick cuts, creating a sense of frenetic energy that would become a hallmark of his style. As the decade drew to a close, Hitchcock made the decision to leave England for Hollywood, where he would go on to direct some of his most famous films. He was drawn to the United States by the promise of bigger budgets and greater creative freedom, and he quickly established himself as a major player in the American film industry. His first Hollywood film, Rebecca, 1940, was a critical and commercial success, and it marked the beginning of a long and fruitful collaboration with producer David O. Selznick. As Hitchcock settled into his new life in Hollywood, he began to explore new themes and techniques in his work. Films like Suspicion, 1941, and Notorious, 1946, showcased his ability to craft complex, psychologically nuanced characters, while Rope, 1948, and Under Capricorn, 1949, demonstrated his innovative use of long takes and elaborate camera movements. Throughout his career, Hitchcock remained committed to his core principles as a filmmaker, to tell stories that were both entertaining and thought-provoking, and to always challenge himself and his audience. As Hitchcock navigated the challenges of his new life in Hollywood, he found solace in his relationship with Alma, who remained his closest collaborator and confidant. Together, they would face the challenges of the film industry, from the pressures of studio executives to the criticisms of reviewers and audiences. Through it all, Hitchcock's passion for storytelling remained unwavering, driven by a deep-seated desire to connect with his audience and to leave a lasting legacy on the world of cinema. As Alfred Hitchcock continued to navigate the ever-changing landscape of Hollywood, he found himself increasingly drawn to the world of television, a realm that would allow him to experiment with new techniques and push the boundaries of what was possible on the small screen. It was 1955, and the golden age of television was in full swing, with iconic shows like I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners captivating audiences across the nation. Hitchcock, ever the innovator, saw an opportunity to bring his unique brand of suspense and wit to the masses through the anthology series, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. The show would go on to become a massive success, running for over a decade and cementing Hitchcock's status as a master of the medium. As he stood on the set of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of cameras, lights, and actors, Hitchcock felt a sense of excitement and creative freedom that he had not experienced in years. The show allowed him to explore new themes and techniques, from the supernatural to the psychological, and to collaborate with some of the most talented writers and directors of the time. With his signature wit and charm, Hitchcock would introduce each episode, setting the tone for a thrilling ride that would leave audiences on the edge of their seats. Throughout the 1960s, Hitchcock continued to direct some of his most iconic films, including Psycho, 1960, The Birds, 1963, and Marnie, 1964. These films cemented his reputation as a master of suspense and solidified his place as one of the greatest directors in Hollywood history. The shower scene in Psycho, with its stark black-and-white imagery and jarring soundtrack, would become one of the most iconic moments in cinematic history, while The Birds would showcase Hitchcock's ability to craft a sense of creeping dread and uncertainty. As Hitchcock entered his later years, he began to slow down somewhat, but he never lost his passion for storytelling. In 1972, he was awarded the Irving G. The ceremony, held at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, was a grand affair, with many of Hollywood's biggest stars in attendance. As Hitchcock accepted the award, he was met with a standing ovation, a tribute to his decades-long contribution to the world of cinema. Despite struggling with health problems, including a heart condition and a bout of arthritis, Hitchcock continued to work, directing his final film, Family Plot, in 1976. The film, a quirky comedy thriller about a psychic and her boyfriend who become embroiled in a kidnapping plot, would be a fitting swan song for the master director. As he worked on the set, surrounded by his cast and crew, Hitchcock was still the consummate professional, always pushing himself to create something new and innovative. Alfred Hitchcock passed away on April 29, 1980, at the age of 80, leaving behind a legacy that would be felt for generations to come. Through his films, Hitchcock left an indelible mark on popular culture, influencing countless directors, writers, and actors. From Martin Scorsese to Steven Spielberg, Many of the greatest filmmakers of our time have cited Hitchcock as a major influence, and his films continue to be studied by scholars and film enthusiasts alike. Today, Hitchcock is remembered as a true master of his craft, a man who continues to inspire and entertain audiences around the world. His films remain widely popular, and his influence can be seen in everything from horror movies to television shows. The Hitchcockian style, with its emphasis on suspense, atmosphere, and psychological complexity, has become a staple of modern entertainment. Through his films, he continues to captivate audiences, inspiring new generations of filmmakers and fans. That's all for today's Star Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Casey Gold, reminding you to keep shooting for the stars.